In this demonstration, we're going to take a look at the new features and functionality in CAM350 version 15.1. Whenever we do put out a new version, I do highly encourage you to take a look at the release highlights. They're usually on the start page. And this is really going to give you a nice overview of anything that's new in this release. At the top of the page, licensing information will be available to you. If you are installing this new version on a network environment or in a network environment, then a new license manager is required. In conjunction with that, whether you're installing in a network environment or on a local dongle or MAC address based license, a new license should be installed as well. Now, your old license probably will work if you have 15.0, but there's an expiration date in there. And with each new release, we roll out the expiration date even further. Okay, so we do encourage you with each new major release like this, you go ahead and update both your license manager if you do have one, or your license file if you're on a standalone version. Next, we'll usually show you what the new functionality is, but underneath that we'll actually give you a description of the functionality and a tutorial on how to use it. Usually at the bottom of the release highlights are all the defects that have been fixed, and it's quite an extensive list here, just from the last release, basically. Okay. So let's go back up to the top a little bit here, and we're going to take a look at each of these. So I'm going to start with this one. New in this release is our integration with XPEDITION and PADS Professional. We've had a cross-probing feature with XPEDITION in the past. We've enhanced that to work with the PADS Professional software. We allow you to launch our tool from those tools. We can install menus in those tools. You can decide what format you want to bring it across in, whether it be the IPC 2581 or ODB++. And it will go ahead and start up our tool, CAM350 DFMStream, with that design loaded. In addition to this, any analysis that you run and you found failures and you want to look at them using the cross-probing has been expanded so that now it works with both XPEDITION and PADS Professional, and it brings those error markers that you're used to in those tools back into play as we just basically go to those locations in the CAD system and place their error markers in the CAD database. So now you're looking at your CAD database. It's going to zoom in, turn on the right layers, and if it's a problem that needs to be fixed, you're right there to fix it. So this is the enhancement of the integration with both, again, XPEDITION and PADS Professional from Siemens. When running Netlist compare, often the IPC D356 Netlist will have no connects defined, and these are dummy nets that aren't really a concern for Netlist compare. Oftentimes just basically placeholders in a component that there's nothing connected to a particular pin, or fiducials. Sometimes even tooling holes are defined by the designer in the CAD system, and they come across in the IPC Netlist, but we obviously don't care about those for comparison purposes. There is a specification on this And the more common words used for dummy nets is the N/C or the $, none, $. We see these out of 2 of the major CAD systems out there. But recently we started seeing this unused with a number after it. If we go to our analysis menu here, you'll see that we have a placeholder where we could in the past put N/C or none, but if you had something that was different from each version, then or each net, you could only define one of them. So that's where we put this in here with the ability to add wildcards. So I can put that in there now, and those will be ignored just as if they were the dummy nets N/C or $, none. So this allows you or increases our compatibility with different systems out there that do it different ways. One of our more popular features is Design Compare. And the way this has worked is that you would bring in, say, an ODB file, save it as a .cam, which is our default extension, then bring in your second file, and you could load that .cam file here to compare. But it did require that extra step. With this release, what we've done is we've given you the ability to bring in both IPC 2581 and ODB files directly. So I can just go out here and browse to the ODB. It's going to load it. It's going to align it. It's going to try to map the layers. Now, with a recent release, we put layer name as an option. Well, we always had layer name, but we put layer ID and layer type as an option. And you're going to be the best judge of which one gets you the most towards having all the layers defined with their pair. Once you've done that, of course, then you can go ahead and run the comparison. So it looks like we've done a pretty good job here with the exception of this one. We would just go out and find its partner, map to it, and then go ahead and run. And again, you can use any of those 3 to map your layers. Clicking on, an error is going to bring it up. Obviously, we can see here that the solder mask looks like it's been enhanced. If you work with a fabricator and you request the tool data back, you might see this all the time. You can try filtering out with the filter parameters there. Just go bigger than whatever the enhancement was, or maybe you want them to fail and you're just going to not look at the ones that are small, but you do want to see that there is a partner for this essentially, and we're not missing a clearance here. If we were to look at this a little bit further, here we have thermals that are slightly differently defined. And you may find a big difference. You may find just small ones like this. This is the idea behind Design Compares. We really want to compare 2 sets of data, and those sets of data can be Gerber, ODB, 2581, and we no longer have to do that extra step of saving it as a CAM file. There are several new features in the drill and mill area. The first one is a real simple way to take a board outline layer and create a mill program from it. Let's just say we're creating an assembly panel here in CAM350, and of course we're going to add mill tabs and web routes. So what we can do is go straight into drill and mill now. We can go to mill feature and go to mill route. We give it a name, we'll call it mill. We'll create a new table, and what size do we want? If we're going to use 100 mil spacing, then we probably want 100 mil tool size. Go ahead and click OK on that. And then all that's left is to decide on the compensation. So we want to go outside the board for the periphery here, and we're going to go inside this cutout. And we've created this mill layer. Used to take about 5 more steps to get to this point, so this is a nice enhancement that we've done here. Another new feature is square mill tabs, and that may sound like a contradiction or a problem, but the reality is they are used. So instead of having the rounded corners like you would with a router bit, they get punched, so they actually have square corners. Okay. You could have these in your library or create them on the fly. I'm going to now go to the Insert command and Insert tab and just decide where I want to put these. Now, obviously, we want these to line up if we're doing a panel. We want this one to be in line with this one. So another new feature that we've added here is the Associate command. This is a case where our blueprint tool is actually helping the older tool, CAM350, because this is something that's been in blueprint for a while. So if I pick the first one, and then what do I want to associate it to? It aligns them. Again, pick the first one. What do you want to align it to? And it aligns them. Once they are aligned, as you might expect, when you move them, they move in conjunction. Okay, and I can even turn on layers here as I'm placing these, and I would see immediately that I placed that one under an LED. Okay, because even if I just had Gerber files, sometimes I'll have an assembly layer that has outlines, and that's good to check for. All right. And while we're on the topic of drill and mill, we've added some checks here under the Analyze ribbon. First of all, in the drill and mill pane, you'll see a new set of analysis for drill to board edge. We see this a lot with flex and rigid flex, probably more so than we do with rigid, but we did put a full set of checks in there. We also had requests for a minimum drill size check. Basically, just enter your number there and it'll flag anything below that number. Along with that idea, we put in a new check in copper geometry that looks for stacked vias. Okay, so we didn't really call it a drill check because it's making sure that, you know, as you go through the layers, we don't have more than whatever number we come up with vias on top of each other throughout the design. In this release, we made an enhancement to our assembly checks. So we've had an outline to outline check, but it was really hard to define what particular parts you wanted to be separated from other parts. So the first thing we did was we will use these place-bound layers if they're defined in the incoming data. There's several places those can be defined depending on what type of data you're bringing in. So I'm going to quickly go over to the options dialog here and show you this. So for ODB++ import, whatever you've defaulted in your CAD system as your component outline, it's going to use that if you check this. If you don't check this, CAM350 is always created like a component outline from the pins when you import, if there's not one present, and it will use that for the analysis. If you bring in IPC 2581, you actually have to define the layer names that have the correct outlines, because 2581 is a little more robust. You can basically call it whatever you want to. In pads, now this is old pads layout, you had specific layers things went on, and you can choose that layer here, and it will use that layer for your analysis. But once you have all that defined, Then it's a matter of setting up your analysis. And we split it out into part types, footprints now. And you can grab those and you can use filtering. So if I went over here, for instance, and said, give me all the capacitors, and I want to compare them to maybe the capacitors. So we're doing a cap to cap check here. So I could just do, first of all, a all parts to all parts of, let's say, 5 mils. So I just add that constraint. Then what I'm going to do is come down and do a specialized here of the caps. Change that constraint to something else. And again, it might be smaller, it might be bigger, whatever you need to look for. And then add that constraint. Okay? And then once you're ready to run, you can just run the analysis, and just like any other analysis, failures will show up at the bottom, and you can click on a particular failure to go to it. Okay? We got 2 resistors here, resistor arrays that are right on top of each other. But this also shows another new feature, and that is we've redefined how we report the failures in the Air Explorer. So it doesn't matter if this is a spacing check for copper components or sliver check or whatever. We're going to tell you exactly what the check was, what you ran it at, and then how many failures there were. So this is an expansion here in the Air Explorer that should help with quickly going through and seeing, okay, I ran that at 5, I didn't get any errors. I ran this one at 7, I got 4 errors. You know, it just gives you that ability to validate, if you will. This goes right along with that idea, is you can actually, on these place-bound layers, you can use the tooltips to see what items are now. Just placing the mouse over an item is going to tell you exactly what it is, what component it's used for, and what layer it's on. All that information is available in the tooltips now. A pretty common feature used in CAM350 is the merge command. We see it, people merging in additional layers. Our multi-panel tool, where we can panelize multiple different boards, uses the merge command as well. So whatever your reason for merging in additional data, we wanted it to be a little more robust than it was in the past. Before, it only did it by layer name, and as we saw in the design compare, the layer names can be completely different. So you've got these additional options, just like we do over in the design compare, where you can map by layer ID or map by layer type when you merge in additional layers. Another feature that's a favorite with our users is our design analyzer. A lot of people use this for quoting or just to get an idea of the technology of a design. We've had this capability where you can compare to vendors and their capabilities. You can have a vendor list with many different vendors and their capabilities in here, and then compare to it and get the checkbox over here. But with this release, we've also added the ability to write this out in an Excel report. We've had this other report, which was kind of a unique to us report, this HTML, MHTML file. But using the Excel file, basically we have a sample template which you can start with and modify that in Excel to your own personal tastes. Pick where you want to place the results here. We'll throw them out on the desktop and click OK. And here it's created it, opened it up in Excel. Now we have added a few new parameters. In working with board shops, one of the things that came up a lot was they use this holes per square inch in quoting. So we decided to add it to our report here. If you're not familiar with this is all the minimums from the design, you know, like line with space, surface mount pitch, smallest drill, how many of those drills. We added that to the board details here as well. So we continue to expand this, and you can make it as robust as you want. You could have just the extracted information, or you can even add additional information that's going to show in this finished report. The areas command is a pretty powerful part of CAM350 not everybody may be aware of. Let's just say for analysis, if I wanted to do a separate analysis on this BGA area, all I would do is define that area and then basically run the analysis in that area, or run a combination of that and the rest of the board and say, don't do this area, but do the rest of the board. And I can have different parameters for both. And that was right here. You could just add the region, just go out and draw an area, and then define that in your check. That part hasn't changed, but what has changed is that we now give you the ability to define what the area types are. So that was a rule area, but when you're dealing with rigid flex, you may have stack-up zones in different parts, bend areas, flex areas, stiffener areas, all of those. So when you go to add, you get this dialog, which allows you to select the area type as you're adding it. So I always call, when you're taking a rigid flex design that wasn't sourced from intelligent data and using Gerber and NC, I call it reverse engineering, because you're doing a lot of work to get all that information that was thrown away when the designer decided to output Gerbers instead of an intelligent format. This allows you to build that back again. You're doing that reverse engineering process. So this is handy for doing that particular process. One more item, and this, for a lot of people, this might be a big one, but one of the common issues we would hear from our customers is, I have mirrored this particular layer, but when I bring it back into CAM350, it's not mirrored. Well, CAM350 works on a stack up, so it needs the layers to be aligned, so we couldn't mirror it. We would retain that information, so if we sent it to a photo plotter, the photo plotter would mirror it. But people were concerned that they couldn't actually see it. So with this release, under the home machines dialog here, you can go to photo plotter and either check this box or not check this box, depending on whether you want to see that mirrored data or not. Okay. A simple thing, but something that has been requested quite a long time in the tool, so we have given you the ability to do that. So these are the new features in this particular release, and again, they're all listed here with a tutorial in the release highlights. And then again, down at the bottom, you do have some defect fixes. You can, if you have a tracking number, you can see if a particular defect or minor enhancement has been done. And it'll show in this list down here. But that is CAM350 version 15.1. Do encourage you to get that downloaded, installed, and using that at your convenience. But we always, we have so many enhancements, including these types of enhancements that we do with each release. We do encourage you to get that installed, and if you can, start using that particular version. Thank you for your time.